Full disclosure, my sister is supposed to show up at, like, any point today to play video games. Like, she told me that yesterday on Christmas. She's like, hey, by the way, I'm coming over today, and I'm just going to play video games all day, and we can order pizza and drink. And I'm like, I had planned to film copious amounts of YouTube videos. But yeah, do that. So I haven't heard from her, and it is almost 11:30, which is, I mean, that's part of the course for her. But anyway, I thought I'd go ahead and try to film this video before she gets here, because I really need to discuss ARCS. So in going back through my Goodreads to see what was and wasn't an ARC, because sometimes I forget, especially if I get to read them right before the release date, I forget that, oh yeah, that was technically an advanced reader copy that you got from NetGalley. And I can't check NetGalley anymore because I deleted my NetGalley. They had a breach last week, and people's information may or may not have been taken, and I know, it's like if it's already been breached, just change your password. You can't do anything about it. But I don't really like that it took them so long to tell us, besides putting like a thing at the top of their website. And petty reason here is I've had 100% reader like review score for months. For months. I am like notorious for getting ARCs back within like 48 hours. I will prioritize the heck out of your ARC. And I was getting rejected for everything. Everything. I could not understand it. I was like, what am I doing wrong? I'm trying to put as much keywords in as places. I'm linking all the places that have reviews, my Twitter, my YouTube, my Goodreads, everything. I am trying to be as thorough as possible, and I'm getting rejected for like everything. To the point where I stopped asking for it because I was tired of getting my heart broken. I mean, I can't do it anymore. Especially when I'm looking at the list of ones I read here, and there were so many that like weren't great. And I read a lot of books that weren't great this year because I felt shackled to the idea of reading advanced reader copies. And I thought, you know what? It's really not worth it to read books early if I'm going to force myself through a book I don't like when I could be reading a book I do like. Because I don't DNF ARCs. Like, that feels wrong. I mean, I read all the way through it, and there were some in the summer video I did. My God, they were so bad. They will be on my worst books list. But I always feel obligated to get these books done in a certain amount of time, even if I'm just like pulling teeth to get them finished. And that's just kind of a waste of my time. There are so many books in this room that I have not read. This whole shelf is books I have not read. And there's another one on the other side of the room. And this piano is full of books I have not read. So, like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Read books that you like. Like, stop this nonsense. So I deleted my NetGalley. I'm going to recap these ARCs, and then I think there's one more book that I was luckily able to get an advanced copy of that I was actually looking forward to reading, that I will try to read. And it just doesn't make sense for me to keep, like, pimping myself out to these publishers when they just don't really want to give me the books anyway. I'll just read things that I have, and I'll keep, doing that. I know me, I know my soul, and I am not someone who keeps up with trends. So I am not the person that people go to get information on ARCs. I'm going to talk about the books that I read from summer to now. So this is sort of like a fall/winter ARCs, and a lot of them are already out. They just are. Some of them aren't. Some of them are out next year early. But I tried to write down which ones were which, but if I couldn't look it up, I could not be bothered. It is what it is. And if you want any more details on these books, I have very thorough reviews of them because I thoroughly review books on Goodreads that I read that are ARCs, on my Goodreads, and I will link my Goodreads down below. So the first book on here, I actually was approved for it on NetGalley, but I also got like emails from the publisher to like join their like vlogging thing for when it came out, and I'm kind of sad now that I didn't because I really did enjoy this book. It's called A Golden Fury. It's by Samantha, and then it's C-O-H-O-E, so like I don't know how she pronounces it, but A Golden Fury, I gave it 4 stars. It's already out. It came out a couple months ago. A Golden Fury is about a girl who is seeking the Philosopher's Stone because her mother went mad making it, but that is the thing, people who try to make it go mad. And so it's basically her knowing it will likely drive her mad, but that making it is the only thing that can save her mother. She has to visit her estranged father. She has to find this boy that she loves that has run off and gone missing. It's very good. My main pros were that the lead was very well rounded. I thought that she did strong female character very well. Too often you get strong female characters that are like know-it-alls, and they're rude to people, and they never let other people inform them of things. They're above questioning, and they're above reproach, because publishers and authors seem to think that to get a strong female character, she can't show weakness at all. And I think that this character does a good job of doing that. She has a really bad relationship with her mom. She barely knows her dad, but she doesn't let him give her any shit once she realizes he's acting the way he is. And not to spoil it, but the romance isn't really a thing. There's some complications with that later on in the book, but she handles it in a very, like, informed, mature way, and I really appreciated reading that. It's hard for me, being almost 30 years old, sometimes to read YA and look at, like, 16 and 17-year-olds and think, God, why are you being so stupid? I didn't do that with this character. She was very, like, self-determined and knew what she was doing, but she still had moments of doubt, and that's fine to have that. I thought it was well paced too. It followed story beats from where she started to where she had to go to where it ended. The ending might have been a little bit rushed, but I think that was the nature of it. I think the anticipation makes it a little bit more rushed. The only cons were that the background characters were a little bit flat, and that's not even that big of a deal. You can use some one-dimensional villains every now and then, but the villain character, like the main villain character, was decently fleshed out. I thought, for overall, it was a pretty strong, solid story. Again, it got 4 stars, and for an ARC, that's pretty good. So if you're looking for something that I would say vibes with, like, the tone of Stalking Jack the Ripper, A Golden Fury would be a good way to go. The next book I read was The Haunting of Beatrix Green by Rachel Hawkins, but I think there's, like, 2 other authors. I think this is a 3-authored book. I'm pretty sure I remember that. But I gave it 3 stars. It's out now. It was, and you'll learn this in my Goodreads, like, year in review list, this was the shortest book that I read this year, which is shocking to me because I read many short stories this year. Prose, pretty fast paced for what it is. It says it's a little mystery novella, and that is what you're getting. It has some decent gore in it. I think a man gets skinned alive in this book. I'm pretty sure that happens. It's been a while. I read this right before October, but I'm pretty sure a man gets skinned alive, which is great. The cons, the bad guy's so obvious. It's not even fun. You know it. It's almost like naming your character Voldemort and being like, and this is the bad guy. Like, no shit. And the length is just, I don't think the pacing worked with the length of what it was. And I can't tell because it says, like, episode 1 as, like, the subtitle of this. If it's going to be many more novellas of this girl and this guy, or if it's going to be just mystery things based in, like, Victorian times. I haven't looked into it. I wasn't interested enough in this story to look up any more by the authors or in this story's universe. But do with that what you will. If you want a really quick, like, sort of Victorian spiritualist medium horror novel, this is a cute little thing you could probably read in one afternoon. So the next book I read was The Lost Village by Camilla Sten. This is a translated work. I don't remember what the original language is, but I think it's, oh gosh, I want to say Swedish, but I don't want to be wrong. It's out now. You can look it up. The pros, and this is directly from my Goodreads, pros, you will get answers. You will find out what's happening. Cons, poor mental illness rep. And just, it's such a confused book. They tried to call it Blair Witch meets Midsummer, which sounded like, in October, a dream for me. That sounded like the perfect book. That is not what this was, by any means. And I'm not one to talk on the mental illnesses represented in this book. I will give you anything you want to know about anxiety and, like, social anxiety, probably some passing ADHD, but we haven't checked in on that. But I cannot speak toward bipolar disorder. I can't speak toward, like, manic depression. I cannot speak for personality and borderline personality disorders and anything on the autism spectrum or, like, Asperger's. I can't speak on anything like that because I do not have any kind of personal knowledge on it and, like, how it should look in books. So look up to see if anyone with these like mental illnesses, like when they rep those, when they discuss things, see what they're saying about it. But a lot of the reviews on Goodreads so far, most of the negative things are about the mental illness rep. I think what the author was trying to do, and now let me go back to what the plot is. These people are trying to make a documentary, like a podcast, video, YouTube series about like true crime. And they go to this lost village where everyone like disappeared one day, and all they found was like a dead woman hanging from a pole and a baby. That's all they got. And so it's very on trend. People are doing this, you know, walking up to places. And the new Halloween movie did the same thing, where those guys go to talk with Michael Myers, and it's like, just leave well enough alone. But this novel, it takes place in two timelines. You've got the present day, like, video vloggers, and you've got the background stuff. And the background stuff back in the past was more interesting than the now stuff, where it was like, oh, spooky stuff's happening, they're hearing voices and stuff, you know, people stepping in places, and it just did not work. And then the background was interesting, but the villain was just boring, and I'll get into that. But I think for the history part, what they tried to do was associate people claiming that women who were different from the norm were witches or were in league with the devil. And I think that's why they made that character the way they did, because that would have historically been a thing. Oh, this woman isn't behaving like we think women should behave. She's probably with Satan. And I think that was a fair idea, but I think that this book used mental illness as a crutch to create a supernatural way of viewing things, and I didn't like that. I mean, I felt uncomfy, and that's not even stuff that applies to me. And then the villain was flat. And maybe the problem with this book is that I had just finished The Devil All the Time, which was amazing, and it also deals with some corrupt preacher characters, like quite a few corrupt preachers. And that's what this is supposed to be. It's like a manipulative preacher, but he was just so one-dimensional, and it's like suddenly everybody was into him, and I wasn't here for it. That was not developed very well. It just wasn't entertaining to me. So The Lost Village only got 3 stars, but I think it's probably closer to like a 2.5. It wasn't the worst book, and it did make me want to keep reading it, and it did tell me what happened, but like, at what cost? The next book I read was Flowers of Darkness by Tatiana de Rosny, and I had agreed to read this one. Like, I sent the request out for it when I was in my big AI kick, because it advertised itself as being like AI thriller. I gave it 3 stars. I think I ended up giving it 3.5 stars, and it is out now. It's based in like a future, but it's also like what do you call historical novels that are speculative, but they're like a fake history. It's like a fake future. It's like something happens in our timeline, and then it branches off and it becomes this timeline. Anyway, it's like a fake future in Paris. And this older woman, she's divorced twice. Her most recent ex-husband is awful. And I'm not going to tell you why, because I really like the reveal of that. You get the present day stuff, this woman moving into her new updated apartment with its like AI that checks everything about her every day, and it's nothing but artists and writers and poets and all kinds of things living in this apartment complex as sort of like a commune of creativity. And she's in it because she's a writer focused on writers who killed themselves at home. And I mean, I think that's fascinating. It's like, okay, what's the marriage of like being at home, and what happens when your home is like talking back to you? This had a lot going on with it within that story. And then the background story is kind of the thriller part, where you're finding out why she left her husband. And that bomb gets dropped, and it's like, oh, got it. And so I really liked the AI, like, haunted house aspect. I think that's something that we don't play around with enough. You think of like Disney's Smart House, where it's like the house starts fighting back, and it's like, how do you get out of a haunted house when the house is like technology haunted? That's what this felt like. It was very creepy and unsettling. And then the cons were, what was that ending? What happened? It's like the literal definition of like out with a whimper instead of a bang, because I really don't understand. I think maybe I missed something in the reading where that was supposed to be an appropriate ending, but it like really made itself really big, and then it wasn't. I do recommend reading it though, because up until the ending, it's very compelling. You know, people go missing. There was a big terrorist attack in Paris, and so there's this kind of exploration of like, do the spirits of these people haunt these buildings too that have been built kind of on the grounds of their death? And I don't know. I wanted a little bit more from it, and I think it's going to find an audience with someone who really likes this kind of literary fiction thriller thing, but it just wasn't for me. I think 3 stars is pretty fair. It comes out in March. I gave it 4 stars. I thought Down Comes the Night was great, but I can see people not liking it because of the protagonist. I liked our clearly a water sign bisexual protagonist. I saw a lot of me in this protagonist. I thought the way she reacted to things by like crying was very valid, and it was nice to see it in a novel. I mean, we get, like I said, so many strong female characters, but like, listen, sometimes a bitch just wants to cry. Like, let me just be weepy. But this book really, I think, gave me what I wanted in a novel, because it gave me all my favorite tropes. You want shared bed, you want like people forced to be together in a big gothic house, you want mutual pining, you want slow burn, you want a dance scene. Boy, we will give it to you. And I just really appreciate everything that I was blessed with this novel. The only con I have is that the plot is pretty predictable, but like I said in my review, if the plot takes me through shared bed and mutual pining, I don't have a lot of complaints about the predictable plot. I will tell you, there's a sex scene toward the end of that book that shocked me. I didn't think we were getting that in a YA, but maybe this is new adult and I didn't read it right. But it was very good. It's about these 2 warring cities and this girl who has this healing power, and she's in the army, and they've been trained to think that these people are just so bad, and they've been missing soldiers. People have been stealing their soldiers. Well, there's this man from the other city who can like kill you with a glance. He can like just look at you and will kill you. And spoiler alert, these 2 people end up in the same big gothic house. I'm actually kind of sad this is coming out in March. I think that's a fault of the publisher. This probably should have been a January or February release for most people, because that would have put it in prime like wintry vibe kind of things. But I did appreciate getting to read it in October, and I really liked it. So I can't wait to see what happens when this is published. I hope it gets the notoriety that it deserves, and I'm really looking forward to reading more from this author. The next book I read was Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. That is the 3rd, I think, and final book in the Brown Sisters series. I still have not read Get a Life, Chloe Brown. Maybe next year. I gave this 4.5. It was just shy of 5 stars, and the only reason I didn't do 5 is because I gave 5 to Take a Hint, Danny Brown, which is my favorite so far of the series, and it didn't hit as good as that one did for me. The prose, Talia Hibbert does really good with cute love interests. She writes some really decent love interests. I think the pacing was very well. This one follows Eve, who is the youngest Brown sister, where she is completely like unmoored and unmotivated to follow through on things, and she ends up at this very tiny bed and breakfast, and to show her family she can commit, she becomes the chef for this bed and breakfast, and the owner is just very proper, and he is like, this is the way it's going to be, and Eve comes in like a big old ray of sunshine with her like AirPods in, and she's like, I will do it my way, and I really did appreciate that. I thought that was a cute pairing. It had some realistic drama. That's another thing I think that Talia Hibbert does very well. She doesn't go crazy with the romance drama. You know, like, it doesn't have to be, like, huge stakes every time. It can really just be miscommunication, and it can really just be someone not knowing what they want in life. I also really, really enjoy that it almost seems like in all of her books, the love interests have to kind of self-reflect before they're ready to be with the other person. It's not changing yourself to be with them. It's changing yourself to be better and then being with them. And I can still see where these couples have things to work on at the end of the book. And I think that's really nice and realistic in a romance. Also, because this is the elephant in the room, this is a sexy book. And at one point, I literally said out loud, oh, he a freak. Like, this man is into some stuff. And I found out that apparently, like, Eve was too. And it was really enjoyable. It was very good. If you're looking for some good smut, this is probably the book for you. Cons, resolution's kind of quick. It ends kind of fast. But, again, for the pacing you're going to get, and it makes you feel good. Like, it's not really that you're upset that things ended nicely. It's just kind of ends a little quick for such a long book. A lot more is given to the world building at the beginning than at the end. The next book I read was All I Want for Christmas, which is by Krista Roberts. I think this is out now. It should be. It's December, 26th when I'm recording this. I gave it 3.5. It was a very cute, wintry YA novel. Had a lot of holiday vibes. It's about a girl who is obsessed with Christmas, and she works at a bookstore, which is basically my life. And I think it was pretty short and sweet to the point. It had a message it wanted to send, and so it did it. I think the romance was realistic for two teenagers. That's sometimes, I think, a problem that older readers have with YA is we forget what YA romances look like. And I think this one was very cute for, I believe the protagonist was like 15 or 16. She was not very old. And she felt believably concerned about, like, where you're going on a date and what you wear and, like, how much is expected of you, along with Christmassy stuff. And, like, I think the overall message of this was appreciate what's there. Appreciate what is right in front of you. Because she ends up with a guy, and there's, drama with who she's going to end up with. And it's very, like, look deeper than you're looking. Cons, it's an abrupt ending, and it's wild. This thing takes a turn that I promise you will not guess from the beginning. But go ahead and try. But I thought it was cute. I mean, I would recommend this to younger readers, and you probably could read it in middle grade, honestly. So, yeah, that was All I Want for Christmas by Krista Roberts. The next book I got to read, I'm actually really excited. I got approved for this. I got approved for Namesake by Adrienne Young. And I got to read the next book after Fable. I thought I was going to have to wait till, like, March to read it, but no, I got to read it. I gave it 4 stars. I did not think it was as good as Fable, but it also was a very satisfying ending. I still think it's a very strong plot. I'm very interested in the world. If Adrienne Young wanted to give me more books set in this universe by just other characters, I would be grateful. I would read an entire, like, saga about this universe that she's created. I think the love interest is still good. I do think some characters were tanked a little bit given where their development was in the first book, and I'm not necessarily a fan of that. It has higher stakes. This book, even though it's the second in a duology, has very, like, end of a long series repercussion kind of feels to it, and it can sometimes feel a little bit too much because you're like, wow, this is only a second book, but it does end up coming across pretty well. I think it was handled pretty good. The resolution is satisfying. It wasn't too abrupt. And it's open enough that she could do more with it if she felt like it in the future, but you don't really need any more. You've seen the meat of the story. The cons, like I said, it's like some of the characters got a little bit left behind in development, and the found family that I liked so much in Fable isn't really there because, I mean, if you've read Fable, it ends on a cliffhanger, and that cliffhanger takes you to almost the halfway point of this book, and so you don't get a lot of your family hanging out, but that's all I'm going to say about that. But it is really good. Like I said, 4 stars. If you're going to read Fable, you might as well read Namesake, and if you like pirates and, like, found family tropes and strong characters, this is a good book series for you to look into. The last one I read was A Universe of Wishes, and this is an anthology that I think just came out. And I gave it 3 stars because, like I said, it is an anthology, and I only liked about half of the stories in there. This was a very, very hit or miss anthology for me. The prose, some of those stories are super compelling. Again, go to my Goodreads, look at my review. I wrote down exactly which stories I loved and would like more of. The other ones either just weren't as good or they were downright bad. Some of these stories were not good to me, but I'm not going to call them out by name. That doesn't feel fair to them or the authors. But a 3 is about as average as I can do for an anthology because, again, when 50% of the novel is miss, that does not a good book make. But I did enjoy the stories that were in there that I did enjoy. It was a very varied stories, and I think all these authors did a good job with taking the idea of wishes and putting them in more diverse stories and really running with that. And so in a sense, this book does what it sets out to do. It sets out to make diverse wishing stories. And this would be a really good anthology to look into if that is something you're into, is more diverse fantasy-based books. That's it. That's all that I was able to read over the last few months. It's still a pretty big haul, and that will probably be the last of the ARCs that I will be reading for a while. And it's not fair to publishers either, because I'm about to get really busy with school, so it was probably for the best to stop trying to read ARCs when I'm not going to have time to read them. So I hope you enjoy this. Maybe you'll go pick up some of these books. Like I said, go to Goodreads, look at my reviews. I'm a little bit more in-depth in some of them than I was here, and then look up some of them and see what other people are saying, because, I mean, I shouldn't be the only voice telling you what to read. I doubt I am, but still. And so that has been the ARCs that I read for fall and winter of this year.